Good morning, everyone, and welcome to From Ableism to Allyship, Bendigo and Surround's inclusive community forum. My name's Bridget. I'm filling in for Steph, our wonderful Steph, who was in the program. She's unfortunately unable to be here. So I got the call last night to step in. So that's my excuse for being loosey-goosey, but hopefully we'll make it work. Because that's what this forum is all about, making it work with what we've got. So I am a Women's Empowerment Officer at WDV, that's Women with Disabilities Victoria. It is an absolute privilege to welcome you here today at Larangarak in Golden Square. Firstly, I'd like to sincerely thank Auntie Sandy for the Welcome to Country and Smoking ceremony that's just taken place. It was so incredible hearing her story. Let's give her another round of applause because that was a beautiful, beautiful. We're honoured to gather on Dja country today, and we thank elders and community members for sharing culture, generosity and welcoming with us. Today is a disability-led forum, and that's very, very important. It means lived experience is not sitting at the edge of the conversation, it is leading the conversation. The people most impacted by ableism are helping shape the discussion, the ideas and the solutions. Today, you may hear people discuss instances of discrimination and violence. These topics can be very distressing. If you feel distressed or upset at any time, please use self-care strategies. We've got fidgets, walk around, take a break, whatever you need to do. If you would like to speak to someone about how you're feeling or your own experiences of violence, you can always contact 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732. And in our resources, we've also got that listed as well. This service is also available for third-party debrief. So if you're a worker who's experiencing vicarious trauma, so that means vicarious trauma is if someone else is going through an experience and you're supporting them, it can also be really distressing. So if you need to speak to someone, I highly recommend reaching out. We're very pleased to welcome a number of guests and supporters here today, including the Honourable Marie Edwards, Member for Bendigo West and Speaker of the Legislative Assembly. Thank you so much for being here, Marie. Yeah, let's give her a clap. She's a big supporter of WDV, so it's absolutely lovely to have her here today. We've got Gail Broad, the Member of the Legislative Council for Northern Victoria Region, and to the other councillors and candidates who are with us today. We've also got some representatives from Victoria Police. We've got Jess Island from the Premier's Electric Office. So I would like to acknowledge them being here as well. Thank you so much. It means a lot that there is that solidarity and wanting to change. So thank you for being here and for supporting conversations around accessibility, inclusion, safety, dignity, and genuine allyship in our community. Yeah. A very warm welcome as well to everyone joining us today. Advocates, community members, carers, organisations, allies, service providers, family members, and people with lived experience. Let's get a woot woot for the lived experience. Yeah, there we go. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping and accessibility notes to help everyone feel comfortable throughout the day. We have our photographer, Penny, who will be taking photos. If you do not want your photo taken or published anywhere, please see the folks at the registration desk. We've got stickers that we can pop on your name tags, and that'll let Penny know that you don't want your photo taken. So that's perfectly okay. So our accessible bathrooms and general bathrooms are located behind me. So there's like a little hallway that you can go through. And I got to say, the lighting in there is spectacular. You'll come out and you'll feel refreshed and like a supermodel looking in those mirrors. It's very, very affirming. So I highly recommend. Yes. Oh. Oh, okay. Spotlighting. Good work, Bridge. Is that better? Am I more in a glow of light? Thanks. All righty. So quiet spaces are available if anyone needs time away from. Please feel free to move, stretch, stand, stim, fidget, or take breaks whenever you feel you need to. There is, oh yeah, coffee and tea station over there. I got really excited about the tea. And I believe there's some bickies over there as well. So just over there, if anyone in that direction, is that my left or my right, guys? Left, thank you very much. So if you need support during the day, please speak to one of our staff or volunteers who are wearing the green lanyards. So green lanyards like this. Everyone with the green lanyard, put your lanyards up. All right, so they're scattered around. So please connect with someone if you need to. We ask everyone to help create a respectful space by listening with care and allowing people the time and space to share their experiences safely. Please also help us keep pathways and exits clear for mobility access. As we are entering flu season, please practice good hygiene, as for many people with disability also experience higher health risks. We are also supported today by Auslan interpreters. To support accessibility, we ask speakers and audience members to speak one at a time where possible. In the unlikely event an alarm goes off, please remain calm and look for wardens with a red vest. They'll also identify themselves vocally as well. If evacuation is needed, we will have people to point you in the right direction, and there will be green signs in the car park for the assembly area. So today is about real conversations, about recognising where ableism exists in our communities, systems and everyday experiences, and exploring how we move beyond awareness and into meaningful action. Not tokenism, not ticking boxes, real inclusion and real allyship. The impetus for organising this event came from conversations at WDV's Leadership Hub meetings. Shout out to the Bendigo Hub. There's lots of them around today. And the REACT Lived Experience Experts Committee. Shout out to the experts. And of course, the Have a Say Bendigo group. Yeah. A huge thank you to the representatives of these groups who joined the event working group. Pam Sherger, Alex Remus, Trish Curran, Chris Bolton, Sherry Gumley and Louise James. And thank you to the City of Greater Bendigo for providing some funding to support this event. And this wasn't on the run sheet, but I'm going to say it anyway. And of course, to Bendigo Hub Liaison Emma King and the REACT team, Sue, Lauren and Sandy, thank you so much. You guys put this on. The turnout is incredible. You should be so proud, and thank you for organising it. We're also lucky to have some people joining us online today. So shout out to our online folks watching at home or in their offices. It's beautiful to have you online and enjoying this day with us, particularly the keynote. So, keynote presentation. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Sam Drummond. Sam is a broadcaster, lawyer and disability advocate who works to bring people together to create meaningful, sustainable change. His career has spanned media, politics and law, now specialising in human rights and discrimination law. When now not working or parenting, he enjoys swimming marathons and furiously weeding the native bushland near Castlemaine. Sounds like a lot to do there. So welcome, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me. Is that on? So I'm a short-statured white person with brown hair. I've got glasses on, blue suit, and a Wedgetail Legal badge as a lapel. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands that we're on today, the Dja Dja Wurrung peoples. Pay my respects to elders past and present, including Auntie Sandy, and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, skies and waters. I extend those respects to any First Peoples here today. To Auntie Sandy, I would say, I would just talk about the cherry ballart. My daughter came up to me in Shooting Bushlands last weekend and she was very excited because she found a little seedling that's sprouting up and she didn't know whether it was a weed or it should have been there. And I came up to it and it was a little cherry ballart. And I said, no, this is a good one. Auntie Sandy called it a parasite, but I see it as having a symbiotic relationship with the eucalypts around it. And I think that's the same as our children. They are not all parasites. They have a symbiotic relationship with us. Last week, I joined a group of people who came together to talk about how we can be better allies for First Peoples with disabilities, facilitated by the First Peoples Disability Network. The network's CEO, Damien Griffiths, has written in The Guardian that in traditional language, there was and is no word for disability. This is a wonderful thing in our communities. We have always been come as you are. Evidence gathered from Lake Mungo has recently discovered a single footprint of what is believed to be a male who was using a stick to assist with his running. This is compelling evidence that shows we have always known that disability is part of the human experience. However, we are continuing to butt up against a system that requires people with disability to accept labels that we say are fundamentally about deficit. And it's with this spirit that I want to talk about disability today. When I was growing up, I only knew disability as a deficit. As a short-statured person, the representations that I'd been shown were one of disability portrayed as a negative. I was a single emotion of one of Snow White's dwarfs. I was an Oompa Loompa ripe for exploitation by an eccentric billionaire. I was a hypersexualized mini-me, a voiceless object of ridicule by a would-be dictator. These were people on the sidelines without power and without a voice. Still, I tried to fit in. When I was 13, I lined up for hours just up the road at Bendigo Marketplace to say hi to my hero, footballer James Hird, who I'd seen portrayed as the perfect man. A year later, I watched him lead my beloved Essendon football team to win their last premiership. They lost only one game that year, and they were put up as the perfect team. 2 weeks after that, the Sydney Olympics filled our tally screens with the fastest, the strongest, the highest. Everything that I wasn't. Instead, I was living in a rundown weatherboard house surrounded by orchard, just between Harcourt and the old oak forest on Mount Alexander, with my mum and my younger brother. There it is. It was the 6th house that we'd rented in 3 years. I just got out of a wheelchair for a 3rd time due to surgery, in which the doctors would break my legs and try to remold them into what textbooks told them they should look like. In their words, from malformation to something more resembling normal. I felt isolated, hopeless, and nothing like the people that I'd been watching on the telly. This world was not made for me, so I gave up on the world. After the Sydney Olympics, my body caught a virus, and that got me out of school. And I realized I much preferred staying at home, even this one. Each morning, Mum would wake me up to get me ready, and each morning I'd say I was too tired or too sick. Life doesn't stop for a single mum, so she'd get my brother ready, bundle him into the car, and off they'd go into town for the day. Every second weekend, I'd come up to stay with my dad in Flora Hill. I enjoyed playing sport with him, and he'd get to the end of the weekend and say, "I don't get it, Sam. You seem fine to me, but then you say you're too sick to go to school." What he didn't understand was that he'd created a world in which I felt at home when kicking the football with him. But the world outside these confines was simply not something I felt I could be part of. That was until my community showed its head. First, it came with a knock at my door. It was a friend from Melbourne I hadn't seen in 3 years. He didn't make any assumptions. I was, to borrow a phrase, come as you are. He saw me for what I was, a mate with some annoying habits, but a mate nonetheless. He stayed until after dark. He took me out to the orchard and picked up a rotten apple from the ground. "Close your eyes," he said, and then he threw the apple up as high as he could. The thrill of not knowing where that apple would fall woke something in me. It was a risk, albeit a silly teenage risk, and it felt good. It felt very normal. Not the sort of normal like in the surgeon's textbooks, but normal in the sense that I was an equal, judged on my personality and not my appearance. Either of us could have been hit on the head by that apple. Luckily, neither of us were, but we were doing normal teenage things. Disability as part of the human experience. I made a deal with Mum that I'd go back to school if I could go for a sleepover at my mate's place in the city, and it got me out of the house. I made it to year 12, and after some work experience at a firm here in Bendigo, decided for some odd reason that I wanted to be a lawyer. Disability can combine with other factors like non-traditional families and rural disadvantage to work against you to achieve your goals. We kept moving houses. Mum wasn't always around to take me places and didn't always have the money to buy things like textbooks, new calculators, or revision workshops. I had to manage pain and a lack of mobility. But at every step, I found allies. The local gym gave me a couple of hours work every fortnight doing payroll. They asked what I needed to do the job. I said a stool to rest my legs on when I sat down. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to pay for the petrol to get around town for that year. Teachers, as we know, are stretched to capacity, particularly at a public school in the country. But every single one of my year 12 teachers ran optional classes after school or during lunchtimes. They took a few of us under their wings and made sure we could achieve what we wanted. And importantly, there were structural government supports. There was a strong social safety net, rent assistance that didn't just cover the cost of last week's rent hikes, genuinely free public healthcare, and a world-class education system. These are the acts of allies that got a school refuser from the middle of an orchard into law school. Now, everything wasn't roses after that, but it was a step on the journey for me to be able to advocate for others to have the barriers removed for them. Like Ethan, a smart autistic kid whose parents wanted him to go to the local public school. Instead, the school suggested there was no room for him and they should contact the nearest specialist school. Or Marg, who lives in a set of units and asked for the new communal lights to be low wattage because she's sensitive to bright light. The body corporate told her it was too much trouble and went ahead with installing the lights, resulting in constant migraines for Marg. Or Luca, a teenager from a country town who applied for a job at one of the big supermarkets, ticking the box that asked whether he had a disability in the hope they'd give him a chair to sit on for longer shifts. Instead, an AI algorithm gave him an automated rejection email, even though they continued to advertise the job. These are the stories of people who just want to live a life that they love. Nothing out of the ordinary, just getting a suitable education, safe housing, or a decent job. But society keeps putting up barriers to stop them. This is where we need allies. I know that most people want to do the right thing. There are very few people who get up in the morning and say, "Sun's out, seems like a nice day for a bit of disability discrimination before breakfast." But my guess is that most people are more afraid of doing the wrong thing and that it can get in the way of doing the right thing. So I've got some tips, but these are not exhaustive. The first one is always ask us what would help us and then listen. don't come from a sense of charity or pity or deficit. Don't see us as an inspiration. We're just trying to live our life. Don't make us do all the work. Don't mollycoddle us. There is dignity in risk, like perhaps not throwing up a rotten apple. I've never met an adjustment I don't like, because we don't ask for things that we don't need. Remember that this is going to benefit everyone, and think structural, but act both small and large. Now is a critical time for better allies. If you've come here today, we already know you want to do the right thing. The problem in the wider world is that it can be hard to tell who are our friends and who are the ones putting up the barriers. The disability movement is perhaps unique in that nobody seems to want to create a culture war or score points from opposing our rights. I've never seen a rally with signs saying, "Keep the disabled out of our schools," or "Crips should go back to the home." Perhaps this is because, unlike other movements, anyone can become a member of ours at any time. Political, corporate, and organisational leaders all say they want to support our rights. But then when push comes to shove, we experience their bigotry through an institutional failure to listen and cuts to critical services. If you go out into the bush today, you'll see a lot of eucalypts with thick trunks and strong roots. If you have an axe, it's going to be hard work trying to chop that tree down. Every so often, though, you'll find ones with signs it's been hollowed out by termites. The trunk will have been eaten and the roots are rotten. If you swing an axe, the whole thing comes crashing down. This is what disability supports can feel like. 14 years ago, we saw the establishment of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. This scheme was developed by people with disabilities and our allies. We were listened to. It wasn't from a sense of charity or of seeking inspiration, but an affirmation of rights. It provided the supports and adjustments we needed to fulfill our potential, including allowing us to take calculated risks to get ahead. Government was tasked with doing this work. It had a great benefit to the broader community, and it was structural change, not just tinkering around the edges. It felt like a solid gum tree. Then last month, the Minister for the NDIS, Mark Butler, announced the scheme was being cut. 160,000 people who now have supports are going to lose them. If you include the people who are likely to join the scheme over the next few years, it's 300,000 people who are having the supports that allow them to flourish being kicked off with no guarantee of other supports. To put that in perspective, that's the population 3 times the size of Bendigo, now facing an uncertain future. To stay on the scheme, we're going to have to prove we're disabled enough for the bureaucrats, which comes at a huge personal and financial cost. In announcing the cuts, the Minister used the words "nothing about us without us." Disabled folks were looking around the room trying to figure out who he'd spoken to on this, because it certainly wasn't any of us. The decision to make cuts to the NDIS is the single largest cut to any social service in this country's history. It's also the first major announcement of government policy change since the Royal Commission into Violence, Abuse, Neglect and Exploitation of People with Disability. Instead of learning the lessons that revealed the shallow roots, instead of learning the lessons of the Royal Commission and ensuring our rights and dignity, it's an announcement that revealed the shallow roots of these fundamental supports are undermining the strength of the whole system. If we've ever needed allies, it's right now. But as I watched the budget coverage on the ABC last Tuesday, there was only passing reference to the cut and only to frame it as a saving that paid for everything else. 730's political editor, Jacob Grieber, said that the government should get credit for making plans to curb spending growth, particularly in the NDIS. Credit. It's as if people were cheering on the government as disabled people were hung out to dry. A friend of mine from outside the disability movement messaged me the other day in the wake of the Minister's Press Club announcement of NDIS cuts. He said, "Can you imagine a world, perhaps with very strong community institutions, where community would provide a large number of the NDIS's services rather than the state?" His contention, and I have to get this pretty clear, is that community institutions, whether it be local sporting clubs or not-for-profits or CWAs, have been hollowed out by a politics that says the best way to organise a society is to let individuals do what they want, socially, morally, and in business. And that this same mindset, which advocates for smaller government supports, has been successful to such an extent that now only government supports can provide the programs that we need. This is the community losing itself, and disabled people are left fighting for the scraps. I actually disagree with his contention for 3 reasons. Firstly, community organisations like churches and charities have been some of the worst offenders when it comes to violence, abuse, neglect, and exploitation of people with disability. The second is that some supports need to be individualised. Something that works for me isn't going to work for everyone with dwarfism. Just as assistance dogs aren't going to work for every person who's blind, or the type of wheelchair someone needs is going to be completely different between a person in the city and a person living in remote Arnhem Land where it rains for half the year. Finally, I still think that government has an important role to play. I do acknowledge that community organisations have been weakened during my lifetime in favour of tax cuts and greater focus on doing what benefits individuals. But last week's budget was a confirmation not only that governments have, over a number of decades, helped to undermine community institutions, but that governments no longer think they're up to the job of supporting people with disability to have a fulfilling life. But the reality is that we need both government and community supports hand in hand. So where to now? I want to come back to the words of Damien Griffiths from the First Peoples Disability Network about Mungo Man, who used a stick to assist him. Damien said, "This is compelling evidence that shows we have always known that disability is part of the human experience. However, we are continuing to butt up against a system that requires people with disability to accept labels that say we're fundamentally about deficit. Disabled people thought for a moment in time that society was acknowledging disability is part of the human experience. The past month has been a regression to the system that sees us fundamentally as a deficit." I want to speak direct to the disabled folks in the room just for a moment. Your disability is a wonderful part of you and part of what it is to be human. Be proud of your disability. And it can be hard in moments like these, but we have to continue to practice. You get proud by practicing. Stella Young had this tattooed on her arm because we can forget it sometimes. But we must remember. And to the rest of you, right now we need allies willing to be vocal in our support. We need people willing to listen to us, to amplify our voices so that we can get life's basics. 3 years ago, my brother and I went for a tour of the array of houses we'd lived in around Castlemaine, partly as an act of curiosity, but partly for healing. For most of the houses, we'd have a look, tell a story, and then we'd move on. When we came to this one, what was striking was that absolutely nothing had changed. There was so much trauma at this one house that we looked at each other and without a word, We turned around and got back into the car. On my way here today, I stepped by the house again, and it's gone. The house has been demolished, and this summer's bushfires put an exclamation on top of that. I think about the 14-year-old who lived in this house. And now I wonder whether a young disabled person in a similar situation today, without the same community and targeted government supports, would have a similar fate to the house. And what I urge from the allies in this room is to make sure that that doesn't happen. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we need a minute after that. Thank you, Sam. That was, I'm finding my words. A call to action. So articulately put, and thank you for sharing your lived experience, those stories. You made me cry. Thank you. I needed that. But I think a lot of us felt that emotion because we feel it. And, you know, the narrative going on around the NDIS and people with disability at the moment is really hard. It's hard to watch. And as we advocate, having that solidarity in our community is revitalising, and it strengthens us, it fortifies us for this fight. And we've got some big change makers in the room that can support that fight. So thank you. Thank you again, Sam. So we've just heard a powerful framing of ableism and its impacts. One of the most important parts of events like this is creating space for lived experience, which we'll continue to do with our lived experience panel. Our panellists will now help us further explore ableism and what meaningful change can look like moving forward. Please welcome our panellists, Juanita Miller. Sit wherever you're comfy. Renay Barker-Mulholland. I think she maybe just stepped out for a moment. So Renay will welcome when she comes in. Dr. Bree Wright. Where is Bree? Oh, there's Bree. Thank you. Shona Brown. Come on down. I feel like I'm hosting a game show or something. This is very fun. Thanks, Shona. So I will give a little bit of a description of our panelists. So Juanita Miller you can just take a seat wherever you're comfy. And I think Renay Renay, are you happy just to sit? Yeah, cool. All righty. So Juanita Miller is a disability advocate with 15 years in the sector and is deeply connected to their work through their own lived experience. Renay Barker-Mulholland is a proud Buripai Dunghutti Koori and works to defy the colonial boundaries imposed on First Nations people and shares her staunch intersectional feminist abolitionist perspectives. We love her. And we've got Dr. Bree Wright, a scientist, athlete and advocate who brings a rare blend of scientific expertise, elite athletic experience and powerful advocacy for inclusion and equality. How good is this panel? All right, sorry. And then we've got Shona Brown, and she is a member of the Have a Say Bendigo group, a self-advocacy group run by and for people with intellectual disability in Bendigo, and apparently a local gymnastics champion. Is this true? Yeah. Local gymnastics champion. What? You won a gold medal in your first year of gymnastics? Yeah. This is our panel, people. What a privilege. All right. So let's start the conversation by hearing from each of our panelists about their experiences and understanding of ableism. I've left my notes over here, so I'm just going to seamlessly, oh no, I do have them. They're just on a different page, sorry. Remember, I got the call last night, guys. Give me some compassion. All right, so is it easier? Would you like me to stand over here? Can you see me all right, people in the back? Yeah, cool. All right. So we'll go down this way. If you're feeling comfy with that question, answer it. If you don't feel comfy, that's okay. We'll just move on to the next person. Yeah. All right, Shona, do you want to? Let's do it. Let's hear from Shona. Let's go. You want to stand up or you want to sit down? I'll stand up. All right, come into the spotlight with me. Oh, look at you. Fantastic. All right. Do you want me to hold the microphone for you?
Start with the speech.
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Really nervous. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Shona Brown. I am a self-advocate and a gymnastics champion. I live with lots of different types of disabilities. One of them is an acquired brain injury. When I was 18, nearly 19, I got put in care. I hated it. I was in care for about 13 years and under guardianship for 7 years. And I didn't like being under guardianship. It made it really hard to see my family. All my sisters were asking Mum, is Shona going to come back? And they were really upset. I was tormented in care, and eventually my sisters convinced my mum to take me out of care, but it took a long time. My mum took me out of care. I live in my own unit in the backyard. I am more independent than I used to be. I really want to live with my boyfriend at our own place, and he wants the same thing. I really like being out of care. But I am an adult, and I want to start living my. I want to start living my adult life. I don't want to stay at my family home forever.
Yes. The questions. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shona. I just want to acknowledge how it is really difficult to get up here and share your story in front of a massive crowd. So thank you so much. You are very brave, and sharing your story is going to change a lot of people's minds about how we can better support people with intellectual disability and acquired brain injury. So thank you so much, Shona. Okay. Did anyone else want to give us a little intro to themselves or anything, or are we happy to move on to the questions? All right, let's go on to our questions. So, could each of you share a moment or experience that shaped your understanding of ableism, whether subtle, systemic, or overt? So, a moment where you were made to feel bad about being disabled. Yeah.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. For a period in my life, I was tube fed for about 10 years, and I think that was really a really significant time where I noticed how people would treat you quite differently. Beside the unusual stares and comments and people coming up to you and actually saying, you know, like, what's this for? Oh, you're having oxygen today, love. And just a whole range of really bizarre things, which you just, you know, you're trying to cope with life and you have to respond to these somehow in an appropriate way, I guess. That was really challenging, I found. And the other thing around that was when you went to apply for a position, they would just see you as a sick person. But for me, that was my norm. I wasn't sick, it was just me. And I think that really added to, you know, that really difficult impact that community, their perception has on you. So that was kind of quite significant.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, did you?
Oh, just something else. The other thing that I had noticed was just around because I have a dynamic disability, so I'm often in my wheelchair or I'm on my walk or I'm on my walking stick, and that can fluctuate throughout the day. So I really can see the differences, how people respond to the different scenarios. Like if I'm in my wheelchair, you'll quite regularly get people come and touch your wheelchair. They try to control the toggle and move you. They will, you know, ask you questions about why are you in that, or don't have any understanding of how one day they can see you in a wheelchair and the next that you're actually walking. So yeah, just some of the challenges that I faced.
They're really good, powerful observations as well. Is that on? Oh, yeah. Yeah, really powerful observations. And I think that unique perspective of when you do have a dynamic disability. So for people that don't know, a dynamic disability is when your capacity, mobility, anything about you changes day to day. So for example, you know, myself, sometimes I feel really articulate and on, and other times I can't get my words out, having a brain injury as well. And yeah, mobility, it changes day to day. But some people don't expect that. So, you know, when they see Renay pop out of her wheelchair, it's kind of like, oh, she can walk. It's no, she has a dynamic disability. Though, I mean, you are pretty spectacular as well, but so, Shona, do you want to answer that question around ableism, experiences of ableism? Do you have that one? Yeah, do that first.
About, like,
Yeah, do that. Yeah, that one. Thanks.
What is ableism? Ableism is very confusing because there are so many disabilities. There are so many ways that people are ableist. I've been discriminated against by employers because I had an interview with someone at a shop in the marketplace and I didn't get the job. But I think it was because of my disability. This can't ableism because they made assumptions about me and thought that I wouldn't be able to work, but they don't give me the chance to try.
Yeah. Thank you, Shona. And Renay, same question.
Darling in love is they come out of my mouth a lot. So I apologize if anyone doesn't like it. As a kid, I didn't really know what ableism was because I didn't know. I knew what racism was because I saw people staring at me and my family, and I assumed that was because we were Aboriginal. And then by the time I was a teenager. My dad acquired a brain injury and was in a wheelchair. And then my mum also acquired a brain injury. And then I had a child who was tube fed, and the amount of times that I've had people say, "Oh, is that for oxygen?" And yeah, like it's such a common thing. And I'd tell them, "Yeah, I've just disconnected him and just left it at home. We don't carry the oxygen around." No, I think that becoming a parent, I recognized all the ways that people were looking at my child differently before I recognized it was. Before then, I just recognised it was being treated differently. But I mean, I had lots of friends with disability growing up, and then, you know, my parents were disabled as well. So it was kind of like Damien has said, there's a family story of ours about an ancestor who was chasing a kangaroo, and at the same time some eagles were trying to also catch the kangaroo, and chaos happened and they fell down the hill. But that man was known as one-legged Jack for the rest of his life because he had a limp. And I would say that story comes from about 1912. It's in the paper somewhere. Yeah. So in my family, it's always just been you come as you are, and then you're supported in that way. But I think I recognised it as something that happens outside of that when I was about a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, and Bree, Dr. Bree.
Dr. Bree.
Call me Bree. That's okay. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate it. So I think something that is probably worth saying is that when I grew up, I didn't have a disability. I acquired my disability when I was 22. Had an accident and I broke my neck. So I have had the experience on both sides of thinking that, you know, I was invincible and that the world was my oyster and I could do all these things. And I was very ignorant to disability growing up. I think I knew a few people with disabilities, but I don't think it was something that I really paid much attention or that was highlighted in any of the spaces that I lived or studied. So after my disability, it was astounding just being completely shocked at how inaccessible the world is, and a huge battle to come up against as a young woman to try and tackle a world that is not made for disability. And even now, I mean, literally a couple of days ago, I was in the supermarket and my son is toilet training at the moment. So I'd got him in the car and then he's like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. So I'm trying to get him out of the car, and there's a car that was trying to come into the park next to us and they're banging on their window, you know, trying to get me to hurry up. And I just was like, you don't get it, do you? Like, you know, that is really disrespectful. Like, here you can see I'm using a wheelchair. I'm trying to get my son out of the car so he can go to the bathroom. And they were just impatient. There was no understanding or anything about what I was trying to do, which was a difficult situation because my son is a pocket rocket. But then I had this, after that, we went into the supermarket and there was someone there that congratulated me for doing my shopping.
Oh, gosh.
And it happens really frequently. And I'm just baffled. I'm like, do you congratulate every mum or every person for doing their shopping? Because for me, that's just an everyday task. And I find those things really frustrating. And on some days, you kind of make a bit of a joke about it and go, well, you know, that's where I'm up to right now, make a joke. But other days it gets really, really exhausting. And to be seen so differently to everyone and that they see the chair first. And that's not how I see myself. See myself as a young, capable woman that plays sport and has a job and is a mum. And I just happen to use a wheelchair to get around. But the world doesn't see me like that.
the perceptions that we face from other people are such a barrier in their own right, aren't they? It's perceptions, and I think media and community can change that as well. So hopefully that's one thing that we can take away as well. So thank you for sharing those stories. Thank you all for sharing those stories. So what do you wish people better understood about how ableism actually operates in everyday life, services, systems, and communities? So what do you wish people who maybe live without disability, how they can really understand how you feel and that ableism impacts you? Sam, do you want to have a crack at that one?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with just what Bree just said, this soft bigotry of low expectations for a lot of us, that we get congratulated for going shopping or for getting out of the house or doing something that we see as just, being us. And then in the outside world, that's enough. But really, we're more interested in learning or going and doing gymnastics or something like that. That when that happens, we don't feel listened to, and the systems are limiting our ability to create the life that we want by just congratulating us for going shopping. And it comes at every level. So it might happen at the supermarket, I think, and that can be as damaging as the person who, I'm out on the street on a Saturday night and someone winds down their window and yells something bad. Both hurt in different ways, and both have impacts, because maybe I don't want to go out on Saturday night now, but also, doing something very normal like wanting to be a parent. And this is something that I've come across is that when you have those limits of what people think you're able to do, then they don't expect you to do the things that everyone else wants to do. So when I was becoming a parent and we started looking down IVF, I just got grilled. The doctors started asking me questions like, do your parents have dwarfism? And when I said no, the response was, oh, good, because it's not genetic. And so you have the street and shopping level thing, and then you have that really structural change that's needed, where someone goes to be a parent and they go, fantastic, that's a choice that's going to change your life. And once we get both levels, the little things and the big things, right, then it removes those barriers for all of us.
I've found around that hospital admissions can be really challenging, particularly with someone with a disability. In some cases, essential mobility aids are removed from you. They're taken away without any clear communication or suitable alternatives for us. And then we're just left vulnerable and unsafe. And you're more dependent. So we all know that the staff in the hospital system are really, it's very busy and hectic. However, it's an afterthought about where our devices are placed in a hospital, how they're treated, and it just makes it really difficult for us. And around that type of thing as well, I have found that in medical settings like medical clinics, you can go into a clinic and you can be at a wheelchair level and the desk is so high, the staff can't even see you. So you're literally putting your hand up, hey, I'm here. And they're standing up, and then of course you've got the attention of everyone else in the room. So they're the kind of things that we do need to change and make some positive changes around.
How does it affect us? Because of the experience and other experiences like that I felt like I'll never get a job because of my disability, and that people don't want me uh, uh, or accept me. uh, I, Ableism makes me feel unlucky because of my disability, because I didn't think that I could look after myself. I had to be in care, and it made me very unhappy, and I don't want to be there. People don't learn to, listen to me and let me independent like I wouldn't, like I wanted to.
So let me get my brain back to gear. We're talking about how different types of ableism impact us. Oh, what they wish they'd better understood. How much I have to choose between being disabled and being Indigenous. So often it's a one box or the other. Interestingly, I went to a performance the other day and I had to indicate that I was using a wheelchair. The venue was small. I knew why I needed to say that, but they had the option to have Indigenous tickets for a lower price. But because I was an Indigenous wheelchair user, they didn't think the two would ever meet. And so it's really interesting that I always have to choose. And, you know, systems that I have developed since I became a member of the NDIS have been how I've built a community of people that allow me to access my culture and that allow me to engage with my culture in a way that I've never been able to before. I think that's the one thing that really, like, I feel like I have to pick a box and I can't be both because that's too many extras, that's too many special needs, when really it's a fundamental human right. And Australia has some of the worst record in terms of human rights in the world, and that is shameful because everybody here I know wants to do better. And you know, I think that's the first step, is having conversations, knowing that people want to do better, and then I really love that. I've never met a measure that I didn't like. That's because it's so true. It is so very true. But that's the thing that comes to my mind, is that I'm constantly forced to choose which identity is presented first.
Oh, really powerful, Renay, and can definitely relate to that story, because it's like, you're a mum as well.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I'm a mum.
And then more than one kid. Oh my God, what? Like,
Is that even safe?
Yeah.
Like you. Yeah. It's really, really fascinating, actually. The misperception around what people with a disability, what their capacity is. I'm not a huge fan of the word disability. I prefer to go differently abled, because I feel like if we can understand that, we can kind of look at people in a little bit of a different way, that we are so capable, and you can see that from the whole panel. And I'm sure if you listen to the stories of others in this room, people with disabilities are so capable, but we are able in different ways. And we need to be able to harness that. And to be able to do that, we need people to listen to what is the thing that we need to make us extraordinary. So for me to get into a building, to be able to do my science, I need a ramp to get in the front door. Look, that means that I can be extraordinary. But for someone else, it might be that they need a hearing loop, or they need some other modification, just so
they are differently abled. So allow us to be extraordinary.
Can I add one thing? I love that whole idea, and I always phrase it as saying, you wouldn't ask a fish to ride a bike. You might ask a fish to swim in the ocean and they'll be great at it, but they can't ride a bike. And that doesn't mean they're a terrible fish. It just means they can't ride a bike. And that's the kind of feeling you go, like, where are the strengths of these people? What can we see rather than the deficit? Yeah.
Again, it's wonderful to have such a diverse panel, but you can see that there's a lot of nodding going on and there's a lot of affirming of, I've had that experience. I can relate to that. And what unites us as the disability community as well. And it kind of leads us into this next question. How does ableism show up differently depending on disability, visibility, so meaning how present they are in, like media and things like that, and access needs, culture, communication, or support requirements? So how does that ableism show up differently?
Well, it shows up differently depending on who you are and what your circumstances are, and I think, I'm going to experience disability very differently from a woman or a First Nations person or someone who's migrated recently to this country. When I was 20, I realized that if people could just hear my voice, they thought that a lot of those barriers just dropped away. So I started a radio show at my local community radio station. And it was a different experience for me because suddenly the barriers weren't there. I had this sort of accent that was halfway between Melbourne and regional Victoria, and nobody judged me on what first looks. They were just judging me by some of the terrible things that I was saying on the radio. That's right. And so I think when you stripped out, I've made a point recently of trying to be visually represented when I speak, because that means that people are challenged by what they're seeing on the TV or in person or whatever it might be. So my answer to that is just it comes with those lenses of privilege that are heaped upon us every day, and that we all experience it differently. And the important thing is there that you recognize that and you strip them back, and you actually come back to the question that you can ask us, well, what do you need here? How can I facilitate you being your best in this situation?
I think, as you said, Sam, it just comes back to each one of us as an individual, just much like everyone out in the audience. My needs are going to be very different than Shona's and Renay's. And sorry, Bree, it's my memory. And that's just how it is. So we just have to adjust to those needs and just be open to making positive change and listen to what people's needs are and move forward from there.
How do we change it? I want to. Oh no, I made a mistake. I want people to listen and. Oh no. Okay. I want people to listen and give me a chance to try things. I want this for other people too. People should have the chance to be independent. It would be good if there was more support for living independently, like housing programs and for working and getting a job. I want none. No, I want non-disabled people to be helpful for us.
I have to cut that. That was
Yeah.
well.
That's it. I'm finished.
You're done. Yeah, drop the mic. You're out. Thanks. Yeah,
Thank you, Shona. I think the thing that I find that I come up across barriers the most is parenting. Little things like when my children are younger, the accessible entrance. You know, if I've got a toddler who doesn't want to walk 100 meters to the accessible entrance, you know, what are my options? I carry them in my chair, or I make them walk the 100 meters. And I just think that understanding how everybody can benefit from everybody's individual needs, but also that sometimes that they are conflicting and that needs to be managed. Sometimes some people want the big light on and some people want the big light off. So it's all about having a conversation, listening, and not being afraid to give someone some power over their own life and their own choices, whether that's, you know, how long I brush my teeth for, or what shoes I wear, or if I drink too many drinks of alcohol. You know, there's so many choices that we make in a day, and so many opportunities for you to give someone a chance to make that choice.
I've just got a really fun fact because you said about alcohol and I can't help myself. Apparently in a wheelchair you can be done for drink driving. How insane is that?
That
Just thought I'd add in that fun fact.
That's really not fair because they speed limit my chair. So if they're gonna speed limit me to under the postie, they should. Yeah, that's
Crazy. Anyway,
yeah.
I heard that's a fun fact. Someone corrects me if I'm wrong, but
Well, I saw some police officers in here before. Hopefully there was no drunk wheelchair user out there. No.
Yeah. I think what everyone has said has been really valuable. So I don't think I have too much more to add to this question other than I feel that coming back to the line, come as you are, is so powerful because it doesn't matter whether it is a cultural thing, your sexuality, your disability. So much of what we see in Australia comes down to judgment, discrimination in different ways, that lack of care that people have when they meet someone where they make an initial assessment about going, oh, you're in a wheelchair, you must be a blind, deaf, dumb quadriplegic. Like you can't even order your dinner. And I've literally had that in a restaurant where someone has asked my husband what I would like for dinner and he just laughed. Like these kind of misconceptions, I think, are really, really problematic, and we need to just come right back to that idea of, you know, respect for people, having the conversation and starting with how can I help you or support you, which isn't I'm going to grab your chair now or I'm going to assume that this is what you want. Start with a question.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on something Renay said around parenting. I'll just, you know, I've got a young 6-year-old who is autistic, PDA, high sensory seeking, always on the go. And I have mobility issues, you know, fractured my spine and have a lot of things going on. But I was really proud of myself. I advocated for myself and got Bridget to grab me a chair because I was getting really tired. So that's a small act of like, well done. But yeah, just that the conflicting needs. I'm still navigating every day how I can show up for my son and take care of myself. And it is so hard. It is so difficult every day. But hearing, talking to Renay earlier about her children and how they're thriving, it fills me with courage to show up every day. I'm getting like goosebumps every day for my kid and my family, and not just them, the whole community, because I know him and I showing up as we are is a benefit to the whole community, because the value that he has is infinite. And if he doesn't feel comfortable, that's on the rest of society. That's not his fault. And so, yeah, I just hearing these conversations and being part of this is so valuable. And I hope others are taking that home as well. And this leads into a really important one. We're going to talk about internalized ableism. So internalized ableism is that feeling of, like, I stood here, my back really seizing up, starting to hurt, swaying. And I still had this voice in my head go, oh no, don't, you'll be a distraction. You'll interrupt things. You'll make a big deal. You'll center yourself. I love to center myself. But in a look at me kind of way. And that's internalized ableism. It's that feeling of my needs aren't important, but they are. So that leads us to the question, what can internalized ableism look like in practice, and how does it affect people's lives and choices? Dan, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll start. I think that there are conflicting, for me, there are conflicting considerations sometimes with the right to hold a space. And as a person who's smaller than anyone else in this room, I grew up, you go in the bus and someone says, there's no room. Can you shove up so we can fit three on this seat? And that's fine. But you grow up thinking that you need to take up less space than everyone else. And then that ends up not being just physical space, but mental space, and what we were talking about before of those low expectations of, okay, I should be really quick here to go shopping because I don't want to take anyone else's space. I don't deserve to go to uni because that's someone else's space. I don't deserve to be a parent because that is the realm of non-disabled people. And it is something that you battle constantly. And I mentioned Stella Young's tattoo of "You get proud by practicing." Is it takes this constant effort to be proud of your disability as one part of who you are. And it's not everything, but it is something of who you are because it makes you unique. And when you practice pride, it gives you the permission to take up space in your community and actually impact your community. So I think that's just something that I have to fight every day is to make sure that I'm being proud of who I am.
I agree. It's such a strong thing to say. It's, we think we're lesser because that's what people assume sometimes, and that's the way people look at us, like we can't bring the same thing to the table, or we're a bit more of an extra effort if we're going to be asked out. You do think about those things. I know for myself, there'll be times where I think, oh, if I can just use my walking stick and then I'm not going to get those questions, or I'm not going to upset that person because they won't have to move their furniture, and I'll just push through it. And it's impossible for you. You do it, but I don't know, you somehow try and do it with grace so that it doesn't impact the other person, because you feel bad that they have to move the furniture around and make alterations for you. And that's just, you know, that is something that we wear each day, and it is quite difficult. So I don't know what the answer to that is, beside us really reflecting on, you know, our thoughts and thinking about, well, let's bring our best each day, which is what we do. But because society says your best actually isn't good enough, we have this little nagging voice in the back of our head saying, get out of that chair. What are you doing? You know you can walk, or you can stand today. Why can't you just stand, you know? But it's to your detriment that you do those things for other people, which is ridiculous. I know it sounds crazy, but that's, I guess, some of the pressure that is placed on us as a disabled person. So, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, do you also sometimes feel like you don't want to be that person with the mobility aid, which I feel terrible about, because there's people who don't have that choice, and that's not a reflection on those people. It's something that I fight every day. I mean, as an example of how structures and systems play into it, we have a 12-year-old car that only my partner can get my wheelchair in and out of. And so if I want to go somewhere, he needs to come, and he needs to be there when I want my wheelchair in and out of the car. And we're not eligible for funding for a ramp. He's been damaged by the ramp. But every day, if I want to go somewhere, and a huge part of my mental health and my well-being is getting outside in the bush every day. If I want to go somewhere, I have to ask him and put him in that position of maybe being hurt, and to push through that and say, actually, I know that you're really tired and you haven't slept and you have your own disability, but can you just get up and do this for me? It's a really, really big thing to ask when you've been told your whole life that you've got to be littler and smaller and you're special and everybody else has to stop for you. So, yeah, I mean, even on the way here, I was battling internalized ableism. I just use I use my autistic brain to remind myself that I'm a human, I have needs, and if I'm not doing something, it's because I can't, not because I don't want to, and that everybody is worthy to show up exactly as they are. So, speaking of another access need, I'm going to have to run to the bathroom.
And Bree, see, we love that. And if anyone else needs to get up and move around a little bit, like, please feel free to do that. Just if you've got that voice in your head like I did, it's okay. Go for it. All right, Bree.
So I think something that I've heard quite a bit that really hasn't, the word kind of hasn't been said yet, but it's you're made to feel like an inconvenience.
Yeah.
So I remember this pretty early on after my injury. There were, you know, I wanted to go and catch up with friends, and then I was like, oh, I don't know if it's accessible, because I hadn't kind of worked out accessibility spaces yet. And it creates this like level of anxiety of going, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get in and have a coffee with my friends. And if I get there and I can't get in, like, do I have to sit outside, or is someone going to help me in, or like, how's that going to work? And this happened multiple times where it was sort of like, you have to do all this pre-planning because our system won't do it. And it is unbelievably infuriating. Like, it is not hard to put a ramp in. I don't care if you have a heritage building, put a ramp in. That is not an excuse to not be accessible. The excuses that businesses use to try and get around and use loopholes, like somehow that is better for everyone else, is so frustrating and so rubbish. And the consequence of that is what we've heard from all these people today, that it means that we end up carrying the burden that should be shared, because we shouldn't be carrying that.
That's beautifully put. Yeah, it is. And it's that framing of being a burden. It's a human right, isn't it? It's, we are, as worthy as people without disability, people with disability. And we kind of haven't touched on it, but I guess we kind of did about, when we spoke about the different ableism showing up in different ways for people with different disabilities. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that people with disability can be, I was going to say dicks, can be not nice people. They can, people without disability, people with disability can be ableist against people with disability. There's a bit of a hierarchy of disability where, certain access needs aren't granted or seen as an inconvenience, but also when it comes to people with intellectual disability, with brain injuries, with psychosocial disabilities, that it's in a different realm because they're invisible disabilities. We're not seen. And so I just want to acknowledge that, it is such a important thing to recognize that. And so I implore, I encourage people with disability to hear these voices, these different perspectives, and take that home with you as well, because we can all improve and better include people. I'm glad you're back for this one, Nay, because I think this is, I'm really interested to get your perspective specifically as a First Nations person. How do race, gender, sexuality, class, culture, age, or other forms of marginalisation shape the way disabled people experience exclusion, safety, credibility, or access? That's a big one. Do you want to take a moment to have a think about it? I'll say it again. How do race, gender, sexuality, class, culture, age, or other forms of marginalisation shape the way disabled people experience exclusion, safety, credibility, or access? And Sam, I'm guessing in your life as a storyteller and with the law, you've probably seen a gamut of experiences.
But I'm going to get a really legal answer, so it's going to be boring. So can someone else go first?
Like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of having to pick and choose. But oftentimes, if I'm not overtly nice, overtly polite, I mean, I've had people threaten to call the police on me because I stated a need. It's the kind of thing that I experience normally, but the shift from me being a nice person to me being aggressive or being perceived as angry, being perceived as dangerous somehow, the jump is always straight away. It's always that's and also just not being believed. I know there's one study that I love to quote. I'm not very good at academic quoting though, so. But there was a study done in Arnhem Land of people who had been identified as being schizophrenic. And I think it was 13 out of 14 people that were in this study, Indigenous people, sorry, I should say, afterwards with a culturally appropriate checklist, they're actually just found to be autistic as opposed to being schizophrenic. And of course, the treatment varies very differently for that. But just that perception that everybody there was a violent or somehow having a moment of psychosis because they were autistic. And I just think that is prevalent everywhere. Just, I mean, I've heard stories of children who are enduring horrible circumstances and not receiving medical care because their parents are being reported for neglect as opposed to actually being referred to specialists. Or the worst is having your babies taken away, which is a very real threat and happens more often than more often than it ever has before. We are seeing that, and that is because there is a lot of First Nations people that have intellectual disabilities, we're more highly represented within the disability community. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that we're facing. And, you know, with some of the cuts that we're facing at the moment, if those choices are removed from me, I don't have the capacity to care for my children. So, you know, will I end up in a care home as a 40, 50-year-old woman as my disability progresses? And, you know, where will my children end up? And it's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night. And I made a promise that it was never going to happen to my children. So I was going to be the last in the line of people who had their children taken from them, because it's, you know, every generation of my family has had that happen. Yeah, please.
We've got a lot of action-packed day, so we'll end with Sam on that note. If you're answering that one.
Just very, very quickly is that Victoria has new vilification laws, which is great, and they instead of just covering race and religion, they now cover other protected attributes like disability, sexuality, gender. There's still a gap though. So within our discrimination laws, if you're discriminated against because of your race and your disability, and you go and make a legal complaint, you can tick 2 boxes, but the tribunal member or the judge has to consider them separately. And there's nothing that actually has to legally interweave those concepts and that compounding disadvantage. And it's an area for reform for any lawmakers who are here. But that's the legal answer. I also think we have to really talk about class and geographical area as well, and we don't talk about it enough because there are these legal protections, but who's protecting the wheelchair user in, you know, Nagambie, who has to get to Shepparton and there's no public transport, so they're stuck. Like, until we talk about those socioeconomic factors, and we have here, just as a matter of fact, like a matter of course, then we're not getting to that root of the problem.
Thank you. So we had one last question. Rather than giving it to the panel now, just so we can move on to the next activity, I want to encourage everyone to think about this one. And after our workshops, after lunch, we're going to come back here and we're going to talk about next steps. And so I want you to all think about this question. What shifts would make the biggest difference in challenging ableism? What needs to change structurally, culturally, or interpersonally? So what can we do to better support you? What can your community do? What can your political leaders do to better support you as a person with disability? So have a think about that as we move through the day, and we'll have opportunities at the end to speak together about that. Thank you to our amazing panel. So if you guys want to, you can either stay up here or you can move back to your spaces, whatever makes you feel comfy. But it is my pleasure to introduce my friend, my colleague, my confidant, Felicity, to launch an incredible new resource that is on your tables, and she'll tell us all a little bit about it. Thanks, Flick. Yeah, wherever you
Oh, sure. Thank you. Oh, okay, sure. That's all right. Hello. Can everyone hear me at the back? Yeah. Thank you, Bridge. So my name is Felicity Anthony. I am the Leadership Hub Coordinator at Women with Disabilities Victoria. Before I launch the resource, I just wanted to take a moment to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on, the Dja Dja Wurrung people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also want to acknowledge that They have cared for and led on this lands for tens of thousands of years, and that we're launching a resource today that's about accountability and repair. So I just felt it was really important to also hold that context. So as Bridget mentioned, we've got a copy of our new resource on your table. It's called So You've Been Ableist, Now What? Community Pocket Guide to Accountability and Repair. This resource was born out of a conversation that occurred at our Bendigo Leadership Hub, where a very important question was raised by a hub member. How do I have a conversation with someone who doesn't realise the impact of their ableism and the impact that it's having on me? And from that question, there was a very rich discussion, and many members shared stories that have happened to them as well, and shared similar challenges. So WDV saw this as an opportunity to create something that hopefully is really helpful in having those really hard conversations. This resource is grounded in lived experience. We took it to our 4 hubs. So we've got a hub in Bendigo, and we've got our hub liaison Emma here, who is just, if you can raise your hand, people that don't know Emma. Hopefully all of you know Emma. We've also got a hub in Barwon and our Melbourne Outer East, and we've got an online hub that is facilitated by Bridget. And another one of our colleagues that was online before. So if you've got any questions about the hubs or would like to join, please chat to either Emma, Bridget, or myself. We're always welcome new members. And yes, there's flyers at the front with more information if you're interested. So yeah, about the resource, we hope that it is helpful. We know that inclusion is more than just good intentions. It is meaningful action and impact. And importantly, we really wanted this resource to be about not calling people out, but calling people in. And yeah, I'm just really proud to be launching it today. There's more copies at the front here. Take as many as you want if you've got some people in mind that you want to share it with. We've also got easy read versions, large print, and Braille. And we're going to launch an audio version on our website in the coming weeks. So if there's other versions that you would like, feel free to chat to one of the WDV team, and we'll see if we can make that happen for you. And I think that's all I had to say about the resource. Yeah. Thanks, Bridget.
Thanks, Flick. It's really fun as well, and hopefully accessible. So just before we break for lunch, so we've launched the resource. Okay. So if you are leaving before the workshops, please scan the evaluation form QR code. We'd love to know what you've thought of the event so far and how you've been enjoying it. Now I believe we're going out for food. Yeah. So, oh, online people, bye-bye. Thank you for joining us. You can tell I've got a 6-year-old. So thank you for joining us online. Thank you for